I think it just speaks to the fear factor that exists right now as we begin these wars. I mean, it means a lot to these companies, that's for sure, but I think that there's a lot of trepidation about how this is going to play out.
There was also an interesting call earlier this week from an analyst on Netflix who said they thought the company should lower prices or offer a low-tier price service for $6 a month that has ads, because that might help them compete in this environment. If they did so, which I think could make a lot of sense, at least then they could offer some reciprocity, where Netflix could say, okay, Disney, well, we'll take your ads on our platform, but as of right now, they don't have that, and that's one of the issues.
The streaming wars is not going to be a zero-sum game. There's not going to be just one winner and everybody else is losing. Everybody's going to make some money in this deal. Certainly, they're all losing money right now because of the price war that's going on, but it's not like, what did we do the math the other day? For all of the streaming services that have been announced at this point, if you bought all of them, it'd be $62 a month. That's not prohibitive in most cases. So I think that they're kind of overreacting. But
remember, pricing matters. Netflix is now the most expensive. Apple's new streaming service, $4.99? Disney at $6.99. So Netflix is on the higher end. So to your point, if they came out with a light version or whatever it will be, Netflix Lite.
It's also worth noting that Netflix here, when you're talking about streaming, is the incumbent, and now you have all of these other companies that were disrupted in their traditional businesses coming in to disrupt Netflix.
Sure. I just think anytime you you have another major entrant in terms of TV advertising, good for the TV ecosystem, too. Yeah. Let's talk some Five Below, shall we? Back in June, the company warned they might have to bump prices over $5, which is what they're known for, because of tariffs, and analysts got concerned. But today, William Blair initiated coverage of the discount retailer with an outperform, saying they still offer a fun, differentiated shopping experience for the whole family. I've experienced this firsthand. The stock today up nearly 2% on the initiation, and this gets right to the heart. That's a true moment. This gets right to the heart of the question that we're debating right now, whether it's Eric Rosengren at the Fed we heard from last hour or what have you. Is the consumer going to hold up fine in this environment despite all of the tariff anxiety or not?
I think they will. I mean, as long as the jobs market is in place, 3.5% unemployment right now. The thing about the jobs market is that they are still hiring, but the firing aspect, they're not laying off that many right now. But to Five Below, I've never been to one. I think you'll be surprised to hear.
Yes,
so I hear. But I did some research this morning, looked at pictures and everything. This is a department store for kids. And I think this is a learning lesson for the bigger guys, the bigger department stores. If you have a sharp focus in your brand and you put the right materials on the shelves, people will come.
And if it's ultra value, I mean, this is one of the sort of deep value names that had really outperformed this
Absolutely.
year.
And if you're talking about people tightening their belts in an economic slowdown, this is not going to be the first place they stop shopping, because you're talking about things that are $5, or because of tariffs, if they raise some goods to $6, I mean, you're still talking about, as you mentioned, deep value. Also worth noting here, too, this does seem to be one of those companies that has something of a moat around it. It's a little bit Amazon and almost e-commerce proof, because you're not really going to be buying $5 fart games.
Well, it's about the experience too, right?
Yes, yes.
I mean, it's the experience that you don't get shopping online or any other store.
You go there and buy cheap stuff that's below $5. You take it home and then it doesn't work. I mean, I'm actually not a believer
we're still using
in this.
Wow, you clearly haven't been to the dollar bins at Target.
The volleyball, the football that we got.
Clutter. You know that within a couple days, it's clutter. It's in the storage. It's just taking up a lot of space.
That pinwheel is a little faded, but we're still using the pinwheel. What you see is that's all the beach stuff. I think it's heavily seasonally driven. So before major holidays, you can go there, Bill, before Halloween, for example, and load up for your front porch.
Oh, yeah, you bet I will.
We'll see you there.
Maybe
Seema, you're going to be
apartment versus house model.
You're going to be
I'm always thinking about space.
Yes.
Yeah.
What a fun mom you're going to be someday.
My kids are getting nothing.
This morning, Morgan Stanley upgraded Snap from underweight to neutral and raised their price target for the company. One thing they didn't mention, interestingly, was Instagram's Threads messaging app. That was touted to be a direct competitor to Snap. Remember, yesterday it sank Snap shares. Maybe not the existential threat that had been feared, but it may become yet another reason for Washington to levy antitrust charges against Facebook. Again, interesting timing with this initiation today.
I agree, but this is competition. I don't know that they're doing anything that would be necessarily anti-competitive. They're just doing something competitive by bringing on a service that happens to mimic one of their main competitors in this case. Now, I know that people are taking umbrage with the status portion of that, which tracks the user wherever they are at any time. There might be privacy concerns about that. I have no problem with the service that they're offering otherwise. It's just competition.
Are you surprised that they're not, that they would do it now?
I think the strategy is that they want to show that they're continuing to innovate, right? They're not stopping everything.
Sure, but I think that sort of gets to the crux of this debate. How much are they innovating versus how much are they once again mimicking another company that there has been a long laundry list of potential mimics before at this time of scrutiny?
Right. This is one of the most cited anti-competitive things whenever it comes to Facebook, is they say they copied stories from Snapchat that stole their thunder, and that's not holding them back from making this move.
Did that with Instagram in a way, which was a replica of what the Snap model offered, and now they're doing it again with Threads. It was interesting. You know how we've been talking a lot about unconscious bias, so I've been trying to be a bit more aware of this. And when I saw the release on Threads, my first reaction was, oh, they're just trying to find another way to track me. And it's really interesting to see how, as you were pointing out, the timing of this launch comes amid this larger concern around privacy and the role that Facebook is trying to play in that
Have you been doing like corporate? Are you doing these corporate training?
Like an anthropology term right there.
Social awareness.
Defensive driving is one of them. I'm still yet to
thinking the deep thoughts there.
Yeah,
Doesn't go to Five Below, but she'll
exactly.
Staying on Facebook, the company is diving into a debate on a global stage over its decision to encrypt messages on the platform. CEO Mark Zuckerberg defending this move at a Q&A session yesterday that they streamed, by the way, after the last one was leaked. This all despite concerns about the impact on investigations into criminal activity. Remember, U.S. Attorney General William Barr asked Facebook to hold off on its encryption plans in an open letter signed by officials from the U.S., the U.K., and Australia.
I have some thoughts on this. I think it's a really no, I know, but I think this is I do think this is a really tricky, controversial one. Because yes, as a company, as in a private company, you want to make sure that you're upholding privacy of your users. You don't want to be compromised or seen as feeding the so-called nanny state. But by not allowing for some sort of backdoor and putting some sort of plan in place, you are, in essence, as Facebook, becoming a largely unregulated private nanny state. That's how I see this. Well, it's a little bananas to me.
Their pitch to users is, hey, we're not going to surveil you. Okay, fine, that's great. I'm glad to know that. However, the search and seizure exists and should apply as much to whatever happens in the online realm as it does in somebody's home. I mean, if there's an abduction, we need to break in to figure out what was happening. The phone becomes a probably more important tool even than someone's physical property.
I get the idea of wanting to make things more private, more small group oriented and things like that, but you're not going to end the false, misleading posts that can exist. And let's face it, the bad guys can then communicate with each other if law enforcement officials, if the law enforcement doesn't have access to all of this.
Absolutely. By the way,
with iPhones, with
by the way,
Apple.
What makes America great is the rule of law. It's not like we're talking about a country like China. When you're talking about something like the ability to build a backdoor into encryption, there are still laws in place. Right. It's not like it gets violated.
The problem is they're trying to have it both ways, where they want to say to the Chinese public, hey, we can protect you, even though they can't, and we know they have to work with the Chinese on this. That's been pretty obvious, while saying to the American public and those concerned about the rule of law that they are not going to block it. They're in a tough place. I agree. This is one to watch. Finally, there's a not in my backyard fight happening in Silicon Valley. It's over self-driving cars, and according to the Washington Post, residents, some of the most ardent supporters of new technology, don't want companies like Uber and Waymo to test autonomous vehicles in their neighborhoods. Safety concerns, disruption to their roads.
I love this. My late father-in-law was an aerospace engineer for many years, and he never flew. He was afraid to fly.
Did he know too much?
I don't know. We were afraid to ask, but I think this is part of that. You know, they know a lot about what's going on in those industries, and they don't want it to go
Ignorance
on in their
is bliss,
exactly.
in other words.
Well, I think the industry is confronted with this notion that transportation needs to evolve, and for a while, the idea is that the answer is self-driving cars. But I think now the industry is confronted with this reality that it may not become mainstream, and that's why the whole ecosystem has to evolve when it comes to regulation. And there is a big risk there with self-driving cars, and we've seen a lot of accidents that have already taken place. Yet you can't also ignore the type of investment that's going into self-driving technology, whether it's GM, Ford, or all these new startups in Silicon Valley.
By the way, have you driven through Silicon Valley, by the way? I mean, there's a lot of congestion there. It's not an easy drive going through that area there.
In some ways, this is kind of an age-old argument around transportation. You just gave the example of, family member, aerospace engineer. High-speed rail is another example of this. Everybody wants it until they realize that they got to put those tracks down in their backyard.